Hi, everyone. My name is Aaliyah St. Omer, and I am a young adult leader from Queens Defenders. Queens Defenders is a non-for-profit public defense organization that also has several community outreach offices. Our community team is committed to serving the borough of Queens, and we believe that starts with the youth. My team and I hope to provide resources to the community to help people succeed, and that starts with education. So I am a freshman at St. John's University pursuing a double major in sociology and criminal justice. And when I was a senior in high school, I felt like I needed more support with figuring out how to pay for college. That's why I decided to organize this event. Hopefully, everyone here will leave with a better understanding of how to pay for college and how financial aid and scholarships work. If you have any questions as we go, feel free to put them in the chat. And at the end of this event, you will receive a survey. Once you fill out the survey, you will be entered into a raffle to win a Chromebook. So make sure you fill that out. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the sponsor of this event, Stuart Post, the Executive Director of the Maringol Family Foundation.
Hello, thank you, Aaliyah. Again, I'm Stuart Post, Executive Director of the Maringol Family Foundation, and we're very proud to have been the first to be the first foundation supporter of Queens Defenders, specifically for the youth programming. And I'm very proud to say that other foundations have now joined us. We're thrilled to be bringing additional resources to this important work, and I'm looking forward to learning something today. So thanks so much for having us, and we're very, very proud to be part of this important work.
Thank you, Mr. Post, and thank you to the Maringol Family Foundation for your support of our work. Now I'd like to introduce you to our panelists for this event, and I'm sorry if I get your names wrong. So first we have Ms. Stephanie Whitener, Senior Director of Student Success from Columbia College. Then we have Lucila Veliquarian, Director of Financial Aid Compliance from Monroe College. We also have John Restrepo, Guidance Counselor from Queens High School for Information Research and Technology. And we also have Princess Holson, Career and College Counselor from New Visions Charter High School. So thank you to all of our panelists for being here. Now let's open up the discussion with today's first question. I'd like each panelist to answer this, starting with Ms. Whitener from Columbia College. So what is something every student struggles with each year?
That's a great question, and I'm excited to be talking to you all today. So when we look at financial issues, I think it's just understanding all of the options is often a struggle of where do we even start. And it often is a totally different language when you're looking at financial aid options. And so I think just helping students navigate how what things mean, and also understanding what their options are, because it's very dependent on your situation. So I think that's to start off. My recommendation and advice is to find somebody that you can ask questions to, so you can understand your situation and what options you have available to you.
Thank you. Is anybody ready to go next?
I think just like the planning aspect of like what they're gonna do after, because I think when you start planning, you have like this perfect picture in your head of like what your senior year is gonna look like, what your freshman year in college is gonna look like, or whatever plans you have. And as they start going through the plans, they realize like, oh, maybe building a college list is harder than I thought, or maybe this college is more expensive than I thought, or more competitive than I thought. So I think being prepared to be flexible as you go and continuously change your plan. And as you get new information and as you take new steps, making sure that like when you take your next step is like, okay, I planned to go here next, but does this make sense with the information that I have now? And just really taking the time to reflect throughout your entire journey. And now it's good to have a plan, but it's good to adjust your plan as you go.
Thank you. Ms. Veliquarian, are you ready?
So I definitely would agree with my colleagues, Stephanie and Princess. one of the major things that high school seniors should do is absolutely organize themselves. I'm a little old school, so I usually have a planner where I jot things down. But I know with the younger generation, you probably have your smartphone, you're putting everything on your smartphone. You definitely want to keep track of the deadlines. Know that you do have to apply to the school to at least know whether or not you're going to be accepted. Due to the pandemic, I know many high school have not been able to visit the colleges in person, but many colleges have gone ahead and created sort of a video where you can view the school through the computer. I know it's not the same, but it gives you sort of an idea of what the school looks like. But definitely keep yourself organized, know the deadlines, know what you have to do every month. And of course, you're keeping track of what you need to do in your last year of high school, and also keeping track of what you need to do to get into college. So there's a lot of things that are happening at the same time. So keeping yourself organized is very important.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Restrepo, do you have anything to add for the question, what is something every student struggles with each year?
Sure, and great pronunciation. How's everyone doing? What do I notice that students struggle with is just the whole process. Oh my God, I got to apply for a FAFSA. Oh my God, I got to do a TAP. Oh my God, what taxes do I got to get together? What forms do I need? Oh, I have till June 30th. And, you know, Miss Villaquiran over there said, you know, the organizational piece, right? Everyone thinks, oh, we have a deadline, we have time, right? And I guess knowing the process and knowing that although you may have time, you don't want to wait till June 30th because there's a chance that you may not make it happen. I think that's a big part of it. And a lot of students struggle with getting it done early enough. So that's one thing I would add is just the earlier the better, because there's more money to give out that way and you get processed really quickly.
Thank you everyone for answering that question. A lot of great information. I hope everyone is taking notes. So let's go on to another question. How about we discuss how to find scholarships? So I know for high schools, you might direct your students to use certain websites. And then for colleges, you guys may have your own websites or your own links to look for scholarships for your specific college. So if anyone wants to start off with that question, how students could look for scholarships, you guys could go ahead.
I can start. In our school, we use a website called GoMary. And it's a website where the students can sign up and they can do obviously scholarship searches. But the reason that our school chose this website is because the counselors can be added. So when we sign on, there's like a school account. So like as the counselor, we can see all of our students, all the scholarships that they're applying to. And that way we're able to assist the students. For example, we say like, oh, I know that you wanted to go to this college. You need extra financial aid. I see you've only applied for 2 scholarships. So it gives us an opportunity to help the students continue their scholarship search. And they get summaries. We get summaries and the students get summaries monthly to keep them updated on any new scholarships that are coming out, what their current status is. And then as a counselor, we get like updates about like how we can assist the students more and any students that haven't done any searches yet. And I think it's just a great resource because like Mr. Restrepo said, it's a very overwhelming process and there's a lot of moving pieces. So the more ways that we can be involved and kind of like oversee it a little bit, so we can reach out to you like, hey, I see you need help applying for more scholarships. So that's a good website if any of you guys are interested. It's called GoMary.
Thank you. And for everyone else, you can see that we dropped the name in the chat, so you can write that down. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I can share some. So when you're looking at colleges' websites, everyone's going to probably have theirs functioned a little bit differently. So that I think adds to the dynamic that Mr. Restrepo was talking about as well, is there's a lot of differences that you might find as you're doing your research. So I think definitely paying attention, being organized, and looking at those deadlines. A lot of schools will have what's called a scholarship day, and so that might be something that you're interested in. Some of those may be competitive, some of them you might just need to apply for, and they may be automatic scholarships. There are a wide range of scholarships that may be available on the college, whether it's based on your academics. There's sometimes athletic or like a music scholarship, so some type of talent-based. And then sometimes it's because you are part of an organization. And so there's a lot of ways that you can research that. So what we recommend if you're looking outside of a specific college is thinking about the groups that you're involved in, or identifier that you relate to. And then there's a lot of databases available on the internet. And so we have a few that we recommend students look at. And there are lots of scholarships out there, so it can be overwhelming. So we recommend students kind of set a goal for themselves of each month that they're applying to this many scholarships. And it doesn't have to just end after you graduate high school. We definitely recommend that students are continuing to apply for scholarships after they start college as well. Because there's still a lot of funds out there available to students even when you are a current college student.
I'd like to add, if I can, how else can you find scholarships? I'm going to tell you all now. As a guidance counselor, it happens to me all the time. I get emails from my principal, from New Visions, from different sources, always, kind of like on a weekly basis, multiple times a week, of scholarship opportunities. And I tend to be a little more proactive, and I always forward those on to all my high school seniors. However, if for whatever reason your guidance counselor may be too busy or what have you, maybe they don't send it out to everybody. So a really good way for you to get a scholarship is to be proactive. I'm a very big fan of closed mouths don't get fed. If you don't speak up or you don't go up to your guidance counselor and say, hey, have you seen any scholarship opportunities lately in your inbox that I may be able to benefit from? So feel free to start that conversation and open that conversation with your guidance counselors and say, hey, I'm looking to save money for college and free money is great. So if you have any opportunities that maybe came through your inbox and maybe you didn't forward them, could you forward them my way? And that's how you're proactive and you advocate for yourself.
Thank you for that. So I have another question, which is more targeted towards the colleges. So this question is asking about what does it mean that a student can negotiate their scholarships? So have you ever heard at your specific college that it's okay to negotiate a scholarship that was already offered to a student, and how could they do that?
So speaking from my experience, it is going to depend on the institution that you are working with, but I think always starting with either your admissions counselor or whoever you're working with as far as the recruitment aspect, they would be a good resource to ask those questions. And I think before you even start the negotiation process is really understanding what that means for you. So looking at what is that net cost? So what can you handle as far as the out-of-pocket expense? And so like when you go, for example, if I go to want to buy a car, I'm gonna have that number in mind of where I can afford. So it's similar to the college aspect. And so kind of going in there with that number in mind of what you feel comfortable making in payments, and just having that conversation of what you feel would work for you. I don't think it hurts to ask those questions and to investigate, but it is going to depend on the institution, what their fund structure looks like. All of us have different scholarship structures in financial aid offices. And so I think just starting with whoever you're working with as far as the admissions process is a good start. But thinking about what is the full cost. Can you negotiate a book scholarship or fees be waived or things like that. So thinking beyond, if you're negotiating things, maybe beyond the tuition as well.
Thank you. Ms. Lucila, do you have anything to add to that? You're muted, by the way.
I can't unmute. Okay. When I try to click on the unmute, it doesn't allow me. Okay, thank you for unmuting me. So I do agree with Stephanie. Many of the colleges, every college works differently, and every college have different types of funding. You, as a student, you do want to know the different type of colleges that you are applying for. So you have your CUNY schools, which are your city colleges. You have your state schools, which are your SUNY colleges. Then you have your private colleges, and you have your vocational colleges. So I think it's important for a student to know the different type of colleges that they're looking into. Also within the CUNY community, if you see the word, like for example, Hostess Community College, then you know you're applying to a 2-year schools. Oftentimes when we're talking to students, they're not really sure if that particular college offers a 2-year degree or 4-year degree. But for CUNY colleges, just know if you see the word community, then you know it is a 2-year college. So you want to first be mindful of the type of college that you're applying for. The next step, I think it's important to view, as Stephanie said, the tuition. Now, in the financial aid arena, I would say we have different terminologies. And so we're going to talk to students about direct costs versus indirect costs. And so you, as a student, you want to know, what is the direct cost? So what the direct cost means is, what is it that the student is actually going to be paying for? So are they going to, absolutely, they're going to be paying for the tuition and the fees. So you want to know, what are the tuition costs? What are the fees for that school? What may differ may be if the student is deciding to commute or to dorm. So once you bring in the dorm into the direct cost, that means you're going to be paying for housing. So you want to know, what is the cost of housing? And so when you're looking at the colleges, you want to look at that before you even look, try to negotiate your financial aid packet. Also do know that the financial aid office, they're really, really good in first awarding any grants before we tap into the loans. So a financial aid advisor, and all financial aid advisor, I know for sure, will always look, what is the student eligible for? What sort of grants are they eligible for? So first, getting your FAFSA in to determine, the federal government will determine what sort of federal grants you're going to be eligible for. That's the information that the financial aid counselors are going to be used. The next thing, if you're going to a New York State school, how much is New York State going to offer in the grants portion? And we look at that. So we're looking at federal grants, state grants, and any type of scholarship assistance that the school would know that that student is eligible for. The students should also look to see if the colleges that they're applying to requires a scholarship application, which is a separate application. Many schools have opted out not to have a scholarship application. For example, I work for Monroe College, and our school, we are working with a lot of the population of our students that are low income. So we know that everyone is interested in scholarship. So why have them go and apply for a scholarship or submit an application when we know that? But there are other institutions that they would have probably private funding, and they do require that sort of scholarship application. So I would say look into that, really go into the college's website. All the information is there so that the student can do the proper research.
Thank you for that. So now I'm gonna move on to another question. If Mr. Restrepo could start off this question for me. This one is gonna be towards more a FAFSA question. So what is, in your experience, why do you think FAFSA is really important for students, and what do you think is the hardest thing students struggle with when it comes to getting their FAFSA done?
Okay. Very, very, very basically, right? If you watch what's going on in the news, right? Everything comes down to politically, we pay tax dollars. What do our tax dollars go for, right? We make all this money in salary, especially our parents, they make all this money. And what do the tax dollars go towards? Well, to support us, young people in going to college. So the FAFSA is super important because it's free money, you know? It comes out, you can, on the FAFSA, you can get up to $6,000 a year for free, about $3,000 per semester, which is, I don't know about you guys, but $6,000 is a lot of money. $3,000, I don't think there's anyone here that can't say, hey, yeah, I don't need $3,000, I'm fine. I don't need $6,000. So what I want to say is FAFSA is very important because it's free money from the federal government. You don't have to pay it back because based on your EFC, your estimated family contribution, once you finish your FAFSA application, it's going to tell you how much, based on your family's income, how much you have to come out of pocket for. But regardless of how much you have to come out of pocket for, the filling out the FAFSA gets you money from the federal government. Now, that's part one of the question. So free money, you have to fill out the FAFSA because you don't want to give up the opportunity to get free money. And part two of that, what is the hardest part or what's the most challenging part with the FAFSA? Very, very plainly and very simply, is having the right documentation and knowing the answers to questions. Let me just give a couple of examples. I don't want to be too long and drawn out, but number one, knowing what your parents' marital status is. Are they still married? Did they get divorced? What's the date that they got divorced or separated? You know, what parent do you live with? What is a 1040? What is an IRS 1040? What is a New York State, IT 201 form? These forms you should have next to you while you're filling out the FAFSA. You should have your parents sitting next to you while you fill out the FAFSA because it makes it very simple to turn and say, hey, mom, hey, dad, can you help me answer this question? Because it's really big and it'll make you fly through the application. The application could be very annoying and time consuming if you don't have the tax documents in front of you and you don't have a parent sitting next to you. So my suggestion to you, to make the FAFSA less cumbersome and be less of a headache, have your parent next to you and have all tax documents next to you. And it's just a very easy breeze to be able to go through that process.
Thank you for answering that. While you were actually answering that, someone brought up a follow-up question. The question says, I am 21 years old and I live by myself. I have my own income and I do file taxes on my own. Do I put my parents' taxes or do I put my own taxes on my FAFSA? Anyone can answer that.
That's a great question. I have one question to that student. Do the parents claim you on their taxes? And what it means to claim is, do they identify you as a dependent on their taxes? That would be the answer to that question determines if you can apply for yourself and what have you. Because if no one claims, sorry, go ahead.
Hi, this is Lucilla. So with the federal government on the FAFSA, they are about 8 to 9 questions that would determine if the student needs to provide the parent's information. And it's not necessarily if the student worked and had their own income. It's really how old is the student. So if the student is under 24, the federal government requires that that student provide the parent's income information. Now, there are exceptions to the rules. For example, the student may be in a hostile situation and may have maybe some abuse, maybe there's an order of protection against the parent, maybe there's some type of police report. So that would be an exception. But for the most part, if you are under 24 and you cannot prove that there was a special circumstance, meaning again, a police report, order protection, something happened in the household that you are no longer living with that parent. Other than that, that student will require to have their parents' income information reported on the FAFSA. And because the student also worked, the student must also report the income that they earn for the year that the FAFSA is requesting. So anyone that's starting in the fall of 2021, you are completing the 2021-22 FAFSA. And on that FAFSA, it is the 2019 income information that you will be reporting on that FAFSA. So again, it's very important. A lot of students feel that if I'm working on my own and I'm kind of paying my cell phone and I'm paying, whatever it is that they're paying, that they classify themselves as independent. When it comes to the FAFSA and the TAP application, we have two different sets of rules. So for the FAFSA, is 24 and older to be classified as independent or working on a master's degree. And for the TAP application, get this, is 35 years of age. So you do have some students that they're about in the 30s and they're still living with their parents. And so they would still have to provide their parental information on the TAP application. If you do have an extenuating circumstance that you are not able to provide your parental information and you're under 24, you want to get in contact with the financial aid office and of the school that you are deciding to attend. It's very important that once you start with this process that at least you're 99% sure that that is the school that you're going to be attending. So that this way you have a relationship with your financial aid counselor. The financial aid counselor knows of your situation and also know that the financial aid counselor will request for supporting documentation. We have to make sure that we have those supporting documentation. So if you tell me that you were in a shelter, or you tell a financial aid counselor that you was in a shelter, then the financial aid counselor is going to ask you for, can you provide us with the shelter letter? It has to be on a letterhead. When you started living there, are you still living there? And so that would just be the supporting documentation that you would need to provide.
Thank you for that. I do have a follow-up question with that same student. She did reply back and say, or he or she, I'm sorry, did reply back and said that their parents do not claim them, and their parents also does not want to provide their tax information, and they are of age 21. So that's below the age of 24, as you just mentioned. So does anyone have any advice for this student?
Yes, so this is very interesting. There was a big case in the federal court about parents not willing to provide their tax return so that the student can file their FAFSA. And what the judge ruled is, because a parent does not want to provide, that is not ground for a special circumstance. That is by choice. That is the parent's choice deciding that they don't want to provide the income information. So in that case, unfortunately, if there's no supporting documentation, then what would happen is the student will only be eligible for unsubsidized Stafford loans. My recommendation is, and we do know teenagers have a little disagreement with their parents, and that's okay. We can have disagreement with our parents, but you just need to mend and try to get that information, because otherwise, If you cannot provide the information that you need to get that special circumstances done, and that's what's called a professional judgment. We call that a override independency. So now we want to make the student from dependent to independent, but we are required to have that supporting documentation. As Mr. Westbrook said, remember, we are dealing with federal funds. So when it comes to federal funds, those are the taxpayers' dollars. We need to make sure that we're doing the right thing by the taxpayers' dollars. Hence, the supporting documentation will come into play.
Thank you for that. There was another question in the chat. Someone asked about the kids in the foster care system. So how should kids in foster care basically fill out their FAFSA?
So that's great. So with the foster care children, that is one question that's on the FAFSA that it will say if you're in foster care. The minute you select that, you're automatically considered independent and will not be required to provide parental information. Now, if that foster parent has adopted you, legally adopted you, then that parent becomes your parent. And so you provide that person's information. But if in your foster care, you have not been legally adopted, then you're automatically considered independent and will not be required to provide your parental information.
And I mean, with regard to foster care, just got to let you all know, students, if any of you are in that situation or you know fellow friends and students that are in foster care, the CUNY system and several city programs, this is going to come out wrong, but they love the ability to support students that have gone through any foster care type of experience, meaning there's money to be given out. There's priority to be given out when it comes to admissions decisions and stuff, because they realize that falling into a foster care situation can be impacting, can be traumatic to a young person. So it's a very special consideration and lots of resources available to students. And CUNY has lots of programs where they prioritize students that have fallen into foster care for whatever, that provide a bunch of support. So keep your eyes open for that. Do a Google search on CUNY. They have lots of foster care programs available that give great levels of support to students. Great resources too. So if that is the nature of it, I'll try to find a link and put it in the chat.
And one more follow-up question for that. Does the information that you guys provided also pertain to regular kids who aged out of foster care, so between ages of 18 to 24? What proof would they need and from where to be able to still do FAFSA?
So once they select that they were in the foster care, there's no documentation that you would need to provide. Just this mere fact that you said yes to that question, you don't need to disclose the parents' income information or their personal information. The question will read on the FAFSA, since the age of 13, were you or are you in foster care? That's the question on the FAFSA. And so the student will answer that accordingly.
Thank you. So now I'm going to move on to the next question, and I'm going to direct this to Ms. Hosen. So what is some concerns you normally hear your students speak on when it comes to loans? And what do you normally try to tell them to either, I guess, ease their minds about applying for loans? What's your take on that?
I feel like when it comes to loans, a lot of students either go like polar opposites. Like some of them are just like, I'm just gonna take out the loans because this is what I wanna do and then I'll deal with it after. Or you have other students who are like, I don't wanna take out any loans, and if I have to take out a loan, then I don't wanna go to college at all. And I think it's all about taking that time. Like I know some of the panelists have spoke about before, about like taking the time to organize and like plan because I think the all or nothing approach is not really the best approach, especially when it comes to financial aid. Because you may have a school where you might have to take out a little bit of loans, but you get a lot more in financial aid and it might be worth it. Or you might have a school where you're like, I'm not going to take out any loans, and then you miss out on an opportunity to like further your career just because you didn't want to take out a little bit of money. But then also just like splurging and be like, I'll just take out whatever I want because this is the experience that I want to have is also not the best approach. So I feel like it's all about moderation. So taking the time to look at what the school costs, look at what scholarships, look at what financial offers you have, and looking at what your cost of living is going to be during this time. And considering the fact that like the loans that you take out, a lot of students look at it for like tuition, but then you also have to think about like books and traveling and where you're going to live and eating and laundry, and just taking time to consider like what does your full financial picture look like, and not going to either extreme, but really taking time to understand exactly what you're getting yourself into. And once you take the time to understand what you're getting yourself into, then you can make what decision is best for you. And I feel like other people can make that decision for you. Like we can't tell you what number is the best number for you to take out. It's all about you and your future. And so that's, you have to take the time and really like process the offers that you have and the colleges that you want to go to.
Thank you. So then let's go on to, are there any risk to applying for loans? I know I for one was really scared about applying for loans and I wanted to avoid it at all costs. So
I mean, you know, when we're growing up, right, we know that 4-letter words are not good to use in your everyday language, and loan is a 4-letter word. But at least to me it is, you know, because owing people money. However, you know, being allowed to go to the college or being able and yes, being able to go to college or the college of your dreams and taking out a loans is not necessarily a bad thing. Luckily, if you take, I believe if it's a subsidized loan, you have 6 months to pay it after you graduate from college, which is really exciting, which means that you have 6 months to find a job and start getting enough income so you can actually start paying off your loans. And the loans, you know, what you don't want to do is default on your loan. That's a term that you're going to have to learn if you're taking out a loan. That's when you don't pay, you know, one of your monthly payments and what have you. And that's one of the risks, is not having enough money to pay for the monthly loan, right? Because at the end of the day, there's late penalty fees and stuff like that if you don't pay your loan. So although the clock of 6 months seems very generous, it's not necessarily always, you know, 6 months can fly rather quickly. So you have to figure out how you're going to start paying back your loans. And the risk is not paying your loan on time. I don't know if one of my colleagues here wants to add something.
someone asked, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. So in terms of the loans, I do want to, there's of course positive and negative. The positive thing with student loan is that you are investing in your education. And if you don't have the funds, you didn't, you know, many of us are unable to save money because many of us are living paycheck to paycheck. And so it's really hard for us to save, especially during this pandemic. If we did save, we probably tap into those saving funds because we needed to make ends meet. So with the student loan, it gives you that flexibility for you to tap into those. And again, it's a federal student loan. So it's not from the school, it's from the federal government. It comes directly from the US Department of Education. And so when you're borrowing that student loan, the positive thing is, one, you're investing in your education, you're getting the funds to pay the balance. Number two, as we get older in this country, I'm Ecuadorian. So in Ecuador, we don't believe on credit. We believe you have the money, you pay it. But here in the United States, it's credit. If you have a really good line of credit, that's going to take you a long way, because you're going to be able to, if you want to invest in an apartment, if you want to maybe buy that car, you have a good line of credit, the student loan will do that for you. Now, the negative impact to that would be once you go into repayment. Of course, if you don't pay, it will affect your credit score. The beauty about the federal student loan is that, number one, currently the interest rate on these student loans are very low. Number two, once you go into repayment, if you're going into teaching, you can apply for what is called the Teacher Forgiveness Program. You can also apply for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So the federal government has created different forgiveness programs that a student may qualify for. And I would urge the student, if you do need to borrow a student loan, look into those programs, go to studentaid.gov and review the section that says in repayment, and go over that information so you know ahead of time, hey, if I go into this field, maybe my loan could be forgiveness, and this is what I need to do to get it forgiven. Not the entire loan will be forgiven, but at least a portion of it can be forgiven. So I would urge everyone to look into that.
Thank you for that. And Ms. Whitener, I know you have a lot of experience in this as well. Do you want to add?
Yeah, I think all that they said is great, and definitely I think that this is part of this process, is educating you on your options, and that's what loans are. They are an option to give you access to education. Where I think it becomes a risk is when you're not understanding what you're taking out. So every year I have students that come to me that say, I have no idea how much I'm taking out in loans. And that's when I think you've gone into the risky area of not really understanding what you are now responsible for. So I think that's really important, is being aware of what you are signing on for when you do take out loans, but also thinking beyond just that one semester that you're taking on loans. There's options to maybe one semester you only take out 1,000, and then the next semester maybe you take out 2. And so you can vary it depending on your situation. And so I think that's always good to kind of do a pulse check on your finances as you're going through your college experience. Every semester doesn't have to look the same as far as what you're taking out in those loans. And then the other piece, several people have already mentioned kind of the repayment time and default. I think you start getting into the risk is when you're not aware of what that will look like once you graduate. Like Princess said, that kind of, I'm just going to take out all the loans because they are available to me. Well, that may look different depending on the career that you're taking out. There may be a very different salary range that you may be looking at, that different repayment plans may not make sense. And so kind of understanding that for yourself too, of where you're going with your career, and understanding what's a reasonable payment that makes sense for you once you are going to be in that, after that 6 months after you graduate. There are a lot of tools out there online that you can look at, but most schools will have somebody that you can talk to about this, to just ask these questions. So I definitely think that that's really valuable for you to do your first year, your first semester when you're on campus, is to sit down with a financial aid counselor to have these conversations so you are informed, because that's what we talk about a lot, is making sure that the students are informed before they have to make these decisions. I am not going to tell you what to do, but I want to make sure that you have the information so you can make a decision that makes sense for you. And I would say most colleges, campuses, we want to provide that experience for you. So I would definitely take advantage of that so you feel comfortable as you're navigating these decisions, because they do go with you after you graduate and you invest in yourself here.
So thank you for that. I actually have a follow-up question in the chat. Someone asks, do federal and private loans differ in interest rates? If so, which type of loan would be ideal?
I think Ms. Lucila is the most qualified to answer this, but anytime you have private versus federal, anything private is always going to be higher, right? Because they have more liability, more risk to them loaning you money. think of it like this, right? If you ask your parent for like, hey, I need $200 to buy something, right? Although that's very risky for them, it's your parent, right? So they probably won't charge you any interest, right? But depending, the smaller the institution, which is a lot of private institutions, the higher their interest rates, because it's more risky that you may not pay it back. The federal loans are backed by so much money and stuff that their interest rates tend to be lower because it's not as big of a risk to them because they loan to so many people. Private, for the most part, will always have higher interest rates than federal subsidized loans. But Ms. Lucila, go ahead. I know you're the expert here.
So that is absolutely true. So when you compare private loans to federal student loans, and you could do the easy comparison, don't let us sway you into going with the federal student loans. I would always tell the student, look into it and guarantee you're going to see that the federal student loan has a lot more to offer. As we mentioned about the public service loan forgiveness program, the teacher loan forgiveness program, those will not be available with a private loan. The private loan tends to have a higher interest rate as well than a federal student loan. So the risks are higher. And so with private loans, you probably will need to get a co-signer for the private loan if you're the student, because most likely you are not going to have credit. And so you're going to need to have either a parent or someone co-sign that loan. With the federal student loan, you don't need that. The mere fact that you are a student, you are attending a college, you are matriculated meaning going towards a degree, that loan you will be able to have. The other things, the federal government does limit the amount of student loans that you would need to borrow, that you could borrow. In most cases, students don't need to borrow the maximum because probably they're receiving the federal grant, the TAP grant, they're probably getting institutional funding. And so the amount that the student is borrowing will probably be very small. And again, it all depends on the family's income. Also do know that institutions, when it comes to scholarship, while some scholarships are based on income, other scholarships are just merit-based. And so it's very important to make sure that you look at all aspects. Financial aid, it consists of various different resources and type of aid that could be available for the student. And that would be the Pell Grant, New York State aid, institutional aid, and of course, federal student loans. Oftentimes students says, well, I got a loan, I didn't get any financial aid. And we go, well, student loan is part of financial aid, so you did get something. Maybe not what you expected, but you did receive, you did receive federal aid.
Thank you. So for the next question, I'm going to direct it to Ms. Hosen first. Are there any last minute pieces of advice you would give to any of the students that you haven't, that hasn't been mentioned yet?
I would just say plan ahead. Look at a timeline. So if you're a junior, look at the senior year timeline and look at the different things, the different deadlines that are coming up, the different types of tasks that you're going to have to do as a senior, and start preparing for those things from junior year. And the latest, like summer before you start your senior year, because once you start your college applications and your FAFSA and all those things, the deadlines start coming really quick. And with each deadline, there might be multiple parts of that application or multiple moving pieces. And it may get overwhelming to do all these applications all at once and trying to like find your parents to get financial documents and get an essay done for college and get letters of recommendation. So if you look at the timeline, if your school has one, you can go online and you can research what is a senior year timeline, what are the application deadlines, what is the FAFSA deadline, and start planning ahead, start collecting those documents. Certain things you can do ahead is like collect your letters of recommendation early, start your college essay early, Even though FAFSA doesn't open up until October, start collecting your financial documents. Like right now is around when most people are doing their taxes. Make sure your parents are not tucking those tax papers away where they're not going to find it when you need it in October. So that kind of prep work. It's like, oh, hey, you just finished your taxes. Let's put this in a place that's easy to access when we do need it. And start collecting all your documents. Whatever you can prepare before, do it. And whatever you can't prepare before, start mentally preparing yourself for this process. Because as Mr. Restrepo said, it's a very tedious process, and it has a lot of parts. And some of the applications can be very long. But if you know what you're getting into and you take it step by step, then it makes it just that much easier.
Thank you. Can Ms. Whitener go next? Yeah.
I think we've given a lot of great advice here, but I would say just making sure that you have a person that you feel like you can ask questions to, whether that's starting at your high school, ask the questions. One thing I think that being curious and seeking that out, that gives you that power and that gives you some control of what you're seeking for. This is your experience. A lot of us, we've already had ours, and so, but we're here to help you. And so taking kind of that, finding that person that you feel comfortable asking questions is going to really help it make it sure that this experience works for you. And so don't be afraid to ask for anything, not even just financial aid pieces, but the whole college experience in general, and just kind of giving yourself that knowledge there.
Thank you. Would Mr. Restrepo like to go next?
4 words: do not waste time. Okay, that's my biggest bit of advice to you. If you're going to wait for the last minute to do this, you might not get an application in. Just want to let you guys know, just to add a little bit about do not waste time. Eventually, you're going to have to create something called an FSA ID. Your parents are going to have to create an FSA ID, and they put you through a database of the Social Security Administration that sometimes takes 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 days to approve you, so they can, and if you have any issues, you might have to send things in and wait for requests to come in. So we're in May right now. It would be a really good thing for you. We're May 20th right now, to have your FAFSA at least started and almost completed by May 31st, June 1st kind of deal. This way you don't waste time if you're a senior. If you're a junior, Ms. Hosen said it excellently. Talk to your parents, find that 2020 tax information, because that's the one you're going to need for next year. And sophomores, great. You're getting started super early. You're already on the road to success. Just know, use all of this as gems of important information that you're going to use as you continue. Or if you're graduating early or what have you, use this information to the best of your ability. And I guess one bit of advice is, hey, anything you guys learn here, the 35 of you that are here, feel free to share this with other friends that couldn't be part of this, and just say, nudge them. Hey, man, I was on this presentation. I think we need to go talk to our guidance counselor and make some stuff happen, because we can't be wasting time anymore. So that's my advice there, guys.
Thank you. And now Ms. Lucila.
So I just wanted to give a little bit more about the process of financial aid. So of course, students are applying through the admissions to see if they're going to get accepted. But as they're doing that process, they absolutely should be applying for the FAFSA. And on the FAFSA, you can list up to 10 different colleges on the FAFSA. Once you submit your FAFSA, you also want to do your TAP application if you're going to a New York State school and you also are living and your parents are living in New York State school, you want to do your TAP application. Now, the TAP application, you can only put one school. So whatever the school you put on the FAFSA, that first school, then that's the first school that's going to go on your TAP application. The other type of grant that New York State has available is called the Enhanced Tuition Award, or for those of you that are going to a CUNY or state school, it is the Excelsior Award. The application became available 2 days ago. So in order for you to apply for those particular awards, you must have done your FAFSA first, your TAP, and then do either the Excelsior or the Enhanced Tuition Award, which is mostly for private institution. For anyone that's on the call, undocumented student or DACA student, the New York State Senator Jose Peralta also have the DREAM Act. So for the DREAM Act, if you are attending a high school in New York, you've attended 2 years and you graduated from a New York State high school, you could go ahead and apply for the DREAM Act. Now, it's important for you to know the process. It's a 3-step process. For the DREAMer student, which is called undocumented or DACA student, you first need to apply for the DREAM Act eligibility application. Then you apply for the DREAM TAP, and then you apply for the DREAM Enhanced Tuition Award or DREAM Excelsior Award. So for anyone who's attending, if you're DACA or undocumented, if you have a friend who's DACA or undocumented and they're not sure how they're going to pay for their charges at a college, you know, it's important for them to know that there is funding available for that group of students.
Thank you, thank you, thank you all for your great helpful advice. I'm now going to open up the chat for a Q&A for a few minutes to see if anyone has any more questions. So if anyone has any questions or what was said so far, you had questions in the back of your mind, please write it in the chat and I will ask it for you. I did see earlier someone did ask in regards to unsubsidized loans, what is the best way to go about tackling the interest rate and just overall paying the loan? So if, does anyone want to try and tackle that one?
Sure. So the unsubsidized loan, you could, if you could pay it while you're in school, that would be the best way. However, you are not obligated to do so because these are student loans and the federal government understand that you're probably not working or you're not making enough money to start paying off the student loans. But if you could and you are working, you also want to look at the federal work study program. So on the FAFSA, there's going to be a question, are you interested in federal work study? You want to say to that yes to that question because that would allow you an opportunity to work for the college for maybe less than 20 hours a week, and you can earn whatever the minimum wage is. And so that would be a way for you to make a little bit of money while attending college. But you definitely, if you could pay the interest while you're in school. If you don't have the funds to do that, don't worry about it because once you graduate, whatever the interest that has accrued will then be capitalized, meaning it's going to be added to the dollar amount that you have borrowed. And that's okay. Remember, you are all attending this session, so now you know that if you're going to borrow a loan, you're going to borrow only what you need just to pay whatever that difference is. That's what you're doing so that when you go into repayment, you don't have to pay as much money. Typically, the loan repayment term is a 10-year repayment loan. I borrowed student loans when I went to college. It didn't take me 10 years. I think I paid it around 7 years, but that's because I doubled up on my payments. I started paying while I was in grace period. I started paying while I was also in school. So you have those options. You know, the holiday comes around. I always tell students, you know, Christmas comes around, New Year's comes around. Those are tough months. You don't want to find yourself obligated to make payments while you're in school during those months. And you don't have to. You can pay as you go. But once you go into repayment, you must start making those payments on those student loans.
Thank you. And for the next question, I want to direct this to Ms. Whitener. Is there a financial advantage to attending school online versus in person?
So that is a great question, and it is going to definitely depend on the institution that you're looking at. A lot of schools, there is a price difference if you're going to go online versus an in-seat option. So as you are doing your research, that's definitely a question to maybe have written down to answer. Is there a cost difference? What is the experience difference for you? And what are you looking for with that? So I can't give a straight answer because it's very dependent on the school, but often there is a difference in cost if you're going to do just strictly online versus an in-seat or even a hybrid situation.
Thank you. For the next question, there was a question in the chat saying, can someone please speak more on the Excelsior Scholarship for students that might not have heard of this?
I mean, the Excelsior Scholarship is a scholarship offered by New York State. One of the requirements that it requires, well, one of the requirements that it has is that your family make below a certain income. So I believe that number is like 125,000, or is it? Yeah, it's 125,000.
Yes.
If your family makes above that, you're not eligible. But if your family makes below that, you are eligible for the Excelsior Scholarship. And also, in addition to being eligible for the Excelsior Scholarship, you have to maintain a GPA of, I believe it's 3.5. You have to maintain a high enough GPA. Those are the provisions of getting the scholarship. In this case, it is free money, but they make you work for that free money, which is great. But, you know, I've always been taught in high school, I learned there's no such thing as a free lunch. So, you know, there are provisions to getting this Excelsior Scholarship that'll pay for your education in full. And Miss Lucila, I see you're ready to say something there. Did I miss something that you want to add?
Yeah, so the other thing students need to be mindful is that it is a great, great award, but you do need to make sure that you complete a total of 30 credits for that academic year. So for example, you're starting in the fall. Usually a school may be 2 semesters, fall and spring. And if you do 12 credits in the fall and 12 credits in the spring, that means you only completed 24 credits. And so you're going to need the summer to then register for 6 credits to complete a total of 30 credits. You must complete at the end of each academic year 30 credits. Remedial courses are not counted towards the 30 credit requirement. The other thing that's very important with the Excelsior, which is the same as the Enhanced Tuition Award, is that once the student graduates, you must live and work in New York State. If you decide to move or work outside of New York State, then that award will be converted into a loan, and it would be converted into a subsidized loan, meaning no interest on that award that you received that's now going to be converted into a loan. The important thing here is also to know what is the length of time that you need to stay in New York. So if you receive the award, let's say, for example, fall and winter, usually it's 4 months per semester. So that's 8 months between the fall and spring. That means the student, once they graduate, must stay and work in New York for the total of 8 months. So for the duration of the award that the student has received. If you go to the HESC website, the HESC website, you'll see the eligibility and all the information regarding the Excelsior and the Enhanced Tuition Award. I would urge the participant to please visit the New York State website and read upon that information.
I just put the link in the chat for the Excelsior Scholarship and what the requirements are, and Lucila said it all, like to the T. So Yeah, so take a look, guys, and really educate yourself on what it means and what have you. But you know, there are what's the word called? There are provisions. There are requirements that you must meet in order to, you know, get that money. And I was seeing here that you can get up to $5,500, $5,500 per resident tuition rate of 6,400, but all the details are there as to how much money you can get, you know, if your family falls under that income bracket of 125,000.
I just know, participant, that all of the financial aid, federal and state aid, well, whether it's Excelsior or Enhanced Tuition Award, is based upon students making satisfactory academic progress. So each school is mandated by the federal government to keep track that the student is successfully finishing either per semester at the end of every semester or at the end of the academic year. So a student could lose their financial aid if they're not meeting academic progress. That's very important because many times students come back and say, well, I could receive financial aid. It doesn't matter how well or how bad I did in my courses. That's not true. You will lose your financial aid if you're not successfully passing all of your courses. So you want to make sure that you do well in your courses. And many colleges also have some type of student services where they would allow you to get maybe extra help if you're not understanding the material, if you're not understanding that particular course. You want to speak to your academic advisor and you want to say, you know, I'm struggling with this class. Can I receive additional assistance? I need help, so that this way you don't fall behind on the class. Do not wait to the final exam or to the bitter end of the semester to ask for help. I always tell the student, within the second week of you starting the course, you would know if that course is going to be challenging for you. The minute you have that sense and that your gut is telling you that, go talk to an academic advisor and seek the help that you need. All colleges wants to see you succeed, and we do want to see you at graduation. Many of us attend graduation, and so we want to see you there. But you know, you have to put in the work and you have to ask for help whenever you need that help.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I also saw there was a question about scholarships for juniors. Just to answer that real quick, the answer would be yes. You can apply for scholarships before you're a senior. You could just talk to your guidance counselor about that. You can always save the money until you get to college. But for the interest of time, we're going to wrap up now. So thank you again for the Marian Gulf Family Foundation and all the panelists today. I think we got some great information from today's discussion, and I will certainly use your tips in the future. To our participants, remember to fill out the survey once we end so you can be entered in the raffle for the Chromebook. And thank you everyone for joining. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to collegeprep@queensdefenders.org. We could continue to help answer questions and refer you to different resources. So thank you again to our panelists and the foundation. That was a lot of great information.
You're very welcome, everyone. Well, you have a great time. Act quickly, do it well, and good luck with everything.